So in this regards, or this subject, remember we covered, I think it was actually part of the same conversation. I can't remember. I really couldn't tell you if it was, but I think, yeah, he was talking to this guy. And I think we had already covered this. This is Todd McFarlane, that is. And we covered how he would say that, yeah, he could do basically these isolated runs, not a run, but toys, let's say, that's based off of female characters, but doing an entire line basically was fiscally irresponsible. And that got some of the weirdos mad because, remember, they live in a different dimension. They live in the dimension that is what they want to be true, they think is true, but that's not how the actual world works. And all Todd McFarlane did was acknowledge the demographics. So here's another thing that he brought up that I wanted to kind of go in on as well. I'm not big into the figure, let's say that action figures or statues or whatever into that space. That's not really been my thing, though I would love to entertain that sort of stuff because I know there's a market for it with my upcoming comic book related material. But as far as the general collection and stuff, that's not been my thing. But I follow a lot of people that are more passionate about that. And, they've mentioned this seeming lack of firearms or moving away from these characters that probably should have firearms, with them not, let's say, coming with firearms in this new run or whatever. So Todd McFarlane was speaking to this creator who is big time into figures, and this is what he had to say. I'm covering this from John F. Trent, of course, over at Bounding into Comics, and him wrapping it up. And this YouTuber, the guy that's interviewing him, says one thing that a lot of people have been talking about recently is the banning of plastic guns coming with action figures. And then he then shows off his Thomas Wayne figure. I feel like this is important to the character, or at least as a key part, he says. Are there no guns to be allowed anymore, he asks. And he says he got this Peacemaker thing, and Peacemaker didn't come with a gun. And this is what McFarlane had to say. We've done hundreds of licenses over the years, and the people who own the brands and the IP, the intellectual properties, they are the boss. And they basically dictate to us, not the other way around. Which makes sense. You have to understand that with Todd and his toy lines, and he is the guy. So essentially what happens is, whether it be through a licensing or whether it be with DC or Marvel going to Todd to have him make these line of toys, ultimately, of course, they're going to get the say-so, though they let him do it staying with whatever. Again, Todd is the guy in this particular subject. So as it states right here, or as he continues, so if we say, hey, we want to make this character, they say, no, we don't want that character to be made. You never get to make them. It's just that simple. Continuing on, he says, so sometimes things come from a higher up that are just given to us, and we just have to abide. And I long ago stopped worrying about whether I agree with them, because when you are dealing with big billion-dollar companies and they make their decisions, they assume they're doing it for the betterment of those brands and their company and their strength and all of the above. Have they made a decision about guns and action figures? He says, uh-huh. Are we abiding by it? Uh-huh. Did they ask my opinion? Nope. Would I have done otherwise? Of course, he says. What are you talking about, right? Now, he continues on. We're doing the best we can with what we have, a new application towards the toys. It could alter some of the figures and characters we make, because if you're doing the Punisher, you can't put a gun. I guess he's still cool in his costume. We're coming up with alternative ways of putting other props that work or don't work. And he talks about this sort of creative workaround. He says, there a workaround? I think so. Well, we'll be coming out with generic weapons pack. Yeah. Will they coincidentally fit some of our toys? I don't know. You guys, as the customer, will have to see. So basically, he's saying we may come up with a generic weapons pack that he releases, but it just hell happens to fit on some of the toys that you purchase. You say, then I just got to sell stuff separately, and then we'll go there. Look in the future. Here we got Spawn.com or McFarlane Toys store or something like that. We'll just put out a weapons pack and let people decide what they want. And he doesn't have to do that. He's more so looking at it from, again, I do think, say what you will about Todd McFarlane, this is a part of the industry that he just cares so deeply about because he's dominated this market, right? Like, he is the guy to go to regarding toys. And I've reiterated that point. So he's looking at it more like this is what he knows the customers want, despite you have these bigger IPs that he may be doing work for on behalf of, and he can't do that. He give you guys something, let's say, that he'd release on his name that just so happened to fit those characters it is that you are able to utilize. So you can put that gun in Punisher's hand. Now, I will say this. I do think that this direction, of course, has to, I mean, you can say you can make it political, but I do think it is very political and on the nose as far as why that direction they're going in. I mean, if you look at, for example, the rise of firearm ownership over the last years, especially after the summer of 2020, when people realized that these idiots don't know how to act and they probably should go protect themselves, because when you allow idiots to act out, you may come in a line of fire, let's say that. So people started taking their own defense in their hands, even people that had maybe historically been anti-gun. So this isn't aligning with what the market wants or anything. This is more so with what a particular sector of the political sphere wants. And this is the side that we've covered, I don't know, a dozen times on this channel, that this has to do with, okay, so Marvel, DC, though not exclusively, let's just keep it in this context. They have went all in on basically becoming a wing of the authoritarian left. It's like this is the entertainment sector of the authoritarian left. Now, right, you said if, you might like this. This is stuff that you grew up on. This is brands that didn't start out that way. But the atmosphere or the landscape is what it is. And you'd have to admit that. Now what we have is a situation where they've made their ideological alignment. You saw what Disney has done, certainly as of recently. The line in the sand has been drawn, okay? So, yes, it's going to be a reflection of it, not just in the story, but even in the economic sense. And you may say, this doesn't make fucking sense. Why would you do something like that, considering this toy market and how this isn't necessarily what they want? Well, again, maybe it's bad information, but they have been convinced that this is the direction that the country is going. This is the direction that, philosophically where the customers are. And yes, it may be terrible information, but hey, you talk to one of these brain leftists, they think, oh, this is fantastic. This is my approach. This is the approach that should be adopted because they think that they're the only people that exist. Again, bad information, maybe blue-haired weirdo that came out of college being a liaison between the creatives and the corporate atmosphere, potentially. That maybe has a lot to do with it. Nonetheless, it is what it is. And I think this is just yet another example of them. And this speaks to more an ideological and political philosophical standpoint. And this is just what it is. So get used to it. Also drop these brands that you like. Hopefully, maybe we make a deal with Todd going in the future. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. Who knows? You just listened to a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake, which is live throughout the week at 12 p.m. Central on YouTube.com/YoungRipper59 and Odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. Be sure to check out my website, EricDJuly.com, so you can stay up to date with everything it is that I'm doing. You can also become a member and get access to a bunch of cool perks and exclusive content, which includes a social media hub where you can interact with myself and other members. It even has an app that you can get, which is now live in the Google and Apple stores.